Well, YouTube, today's the day. I got Metalcloak boxes, Metalcloak boxes, Metalcloak boxes, more Metalcloak boxes, all the wheels and tires. We're heading up to Art Gorski's, to the Wrong B garage. We're gonna get this lift kit installed. Hopefully today. Metalcloak says that it is a 6 to 8 hour install. I'm hoping that I can get it done 6 to 8 hours. Worst case scenario, I'll finish it up tomorrow. It's about 8:30 in the morning right now, so hopefully by dinner time, the lift kit's on. Keep in mind, I got to do some filming while I'm installing as well, which always adds a little bit of time, but I'll do my best to document the install of the Metalcloak 2.5 inch game changer suspension. Enjoy, guys. All right, guys. Here I am at the Wrong B garage. So we just got to shuffle some cars around and we'll get the Jeep pulled in here. There's our Gorski. You okay being on camera?
Sure.
YouTube famous?
Why not?
Cool. We'll check out his SXT plus here, and as he's pulling out of the garage, and we'll get the Rubicon in. Alright, Art. So here we have the wrong cat. Where did the wrong bee come from?
Well, if you look up there, see that gigantic bee?
Big old stuffed one up there?
Big old stuffed one up there. And if you think about the true bee that's on the Hemi in the Scat Pack, that is a devilish bee. And that's where the wrong bee came from. It's just a big old wrong bee.
So,
which evolved to the wrong cat.
yeah, so obviously the
this is a V6.
yeah, this is the SXT plus
and battery operated.
hybrid,
Yep.
you know, and I see you got batteries in the trunk too, right?
Yep, big batteries.
Yeah, so there's a big battery right there in the trunk.
Liquid battery.
Yes, liquid battery. Yeah. And then the Sloth Racing Team. And you've named
Jeremy is now called it the Glacier Team.
the Glacier Team.
Glacier Racing Team, because we're even slower than a sloth. And then our most recent upgrades.
All right, I see you painted the engine cover.
Yep. We rattle canned that.
Rattle can the engine cover. Okay.
Yep. We took a Dremel to the inside of the supercharger there in the snout.
Okay.
Played around, so we took a nice Dremel and made it nice and rough and smooth in there. And then we had a couple of juice. So she was very slow.
Super slow. I think the Charger could take this. I think the Charger could take this.
All day long.
I'm not losing to an SXT.
Plus.
Minus plus. To film here, but here we are. We're pulled into the Wrong B garage. We ended up taking the hardtop off because not that it wouldn't fit coming in. It's just would it fit going back out. So if you're doing this in the garage, make sure the Jeep is going to fit going back out of the garage after you put the lift on. Worst case scenario, you can always just air down and pull out, but work smarter, not harder. Let's get this thing up in the air. We're going to start doing a little bit of work here as soon as we get some of these safety braces in, and away we go. All right, so opening up the first box, one of the things that people always compliment on is how well Metalcloak packs all this stuff up. So, labeled up pretty well. Looks like some paper material, packing lists. I can already see the exhaust spacer here. Let's get all this laid out and ready to go. We got 5 boxes for anyone else happy when you get a sticker after you spend a couple of grand on stuff, you get a sticker. And if you don't get a sticker, it's kind of disappointing.
No sticker.
Stickers. Got it all unboxed. There's the lift kit. I'll call the wife and tell her it's done. But man, these are some pretty stout pieces. Really doesn't look like much once you get it unboxed. So I'm not gonna try to waste too much time filming here because the goal is to be done before dinner is what I'm shooting for.
I was thinking lunch.
I'm gonna be disconnect the sway bar links. Easy to identify that as the sway bar comes right here. Goes down and there are these tiny little bars. 18 millimeter for both sides and bottom. Up here it's 18 millimeter on this side and a 19 millimeter for the inside. Or sorry, for the outside. Alrighty, we're gonna take off the mounting piece that holds the brake line and the ABS sensor. 10 millimeter, and zip those off. We'll be replacing the brake lines later, but what we're doing is taking this off right now so when we droop the suspension, we don't damage any of the lines. So removing that and pulling it off the frame allows it to have some more play. Next step is to remove factory track bar. It's just unbolting driver's side, passenger side, and we should just be able to pull that out. So we're gonna remove this. It's a, what, 21 on the back side?
Yep.
And what is it on the front?
21.
21 millimeter. So the stock track bar has been removed. And just for comparison, I got it laying the wrong way in the ground here, but the new track bar adjustable versus the stock one. And that's quite a bit beefier. So that's definitely going to be an upgrade. Our next step is we are going to remove our shock. So that is a 16 millimeter on the top. And then I believe the lowers are going to be a 19 millimeter. And if you have really cool ratcheting wrenches and stuff like that, it makes this life a lot easier. But we'll pop that top one off and we'll pop the bottom one off. So just to clarify, it's 16 on top and 16 on the bottom. You got to hold both sides because if you just ratchet it, the whole thing spins. Just be sure to have your axle braced because as you take the top nut off, the suspension will drop. It will droop down. So we're just going to put a strap on it right now, just added safety measure, but just make sure you have the support on. Alrighty. So to take off the bottom, after we got the top off, it is 18 on both sides, 18 millimeter on both sides, and we'll get this taken off. The passenger side, it's harder to get a wrench in here because this plastic mounting piece, once you get it loose and you keep the wrench on it, you can actually just grab the bottom and spin rather than doing what I've been doing for like the last 10 minutes of doing quarter turns and flipping the wrench. So we got the shocks out of both sides. We can droop our axle here and get the springs out. And we're slowly lowering. We just want it loose enough so we can see that it's getting loose here, but a little bit more. And full droop, you end up just pulling down on the side of the axle here and you slide the spring out. Do the same to the other side. Here's the stock spring, and this is the new dual rate travel suspension spring. It is longer. Let's get pulling this down. Just again, pay attention to your brake lines. We had ours a little tight, but we didn't overextend anything and break anything. So that's the importance of undoing this bolt. It gives you an extra inch of slack. So we are going to remove brake lines now by using a 15 millimeter. I think it was 15 millimeter. We're going to take this brake line off the caliper and have something there to catch the fluid. Loosen that up, the brake fluid starts running out. So make sure you have something there before you even try to loosen that up at all.
Once you get it off, and the entire caliper is going to drain out.
So definitely want to bleed your brakes when you're done. Do not drive off without remembering to bleed your brakes. So we're going to let that drain for a little bit, and then we'll get the rest of it. As that's draining, 12 millimeter wrench, you're going to undo this piece right here so we can remove that brake line. The instructions here is a little rough. Basically, we've got this coming off. There is your ABS line. It all routes through this. 10 millimeter bolt to take this off. We are going to pull this out so we can take these lines out, and we will hook up the new brake line here in a second. But the instructions from Metalcloak don't cover all of it. So this is the stock brake line that comes down. This is the stock mounting point. It doesn't really explain this too well in the instructions, but we have the other bracket, and we are going to mount it back about an inch and we are going to punch. So we are just punching one side, punch it. We are going to drill. Alrighty, and this, for us, we put it about a bracket width over to go right there, and it's pretty much in line with that. So in the instructions here, you can kind of see there's that stock mounting point. There is the new bracket, this guy right here. So we just moved it over a little bit, and we are going to mount. So we are drilling the first point here, and you always want to start small and work your way up. What are we starting here with, Art? What size?
Hole, please.
Hole, please. Well, it doesn't really matter.
9/64.
Okay. So start small and work your way up. Stepping this up. This will ultimately finish up as a 1/4 inch, and it's kind of a self-tapping nut. So 1/4 inch. Hit it with some black paint, that way it doesn't rust, and then we'll be good to go. Figure out the wrench? Figure out the wrench is overrated. So basically, the new braided line will connect to the factory line. They'll screw together, and this little slot right here will actually sit above, like so, and this clip will just slide in to lock it into place. So 18 millimeter on the bottom, 12 millimeter on the top. We'll snug that down, and then we'll put the lock on there. We got it all buttoned up on this side. Now to install the other end using the stock banjo. We have remounted the brake line. We're come down. This is the factory banjo nut, the one that was in the caliper originally. It comes with 2 brass washers, one on the outside and one on the inside. And then we are just going to thread it back in here.
15 millimeter.
15 millimeter wrench, and we'll get that back in there. Don't cross thread things. Don't laugh. You make it sound like we're cross threading. We didn't cross thread anything. The brake line's reinstalled with that banjo bolt. We're just going to zip tie the brake line and the ABS sensor line together. And what we're doing is we're just going to zip tie it on top of all these rubber grommet pieces all the way around, so we don't have any direct pressure on the wire itself. So now that we got the brake lines, it is time to do the control arms. We have the upper control arm, lower control arm. This is a 19 millimeter, but you're going to actually do the wrench on the inside. This one has that cool little
18.
locking. Oh, I'm sorry, 18. I'm smart. This one has the cool little locking nut on this side, so you don't have to hold it on this side. On the inside, there is this little heat shield, but you can pull it. It's just kind of paper with aluminum on the outside of it. Metalcloak, looks like the instructions say that they want you to take the control arm off and then replace it with the other one. But we want to be able to droop our suspension down enough to where we can fit the new spring in there without having to do a spring compressor. So we are actually just going to do the upper and lower control arm one side at a time, droop it down, and we can install the spring. Up a little bit. Before we get these control arms off, we actually have to drill for the bump stops to go here. And we figured if everything is connected still, we can press on this hard, really hard, and it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, we have backs stands and everything too. But this is where the bump stops are going to be installed. So we are just going to center the puck, use a punch to mark where it's going to be, and you're going to drill a hole. It's about a 1/2 inch hole or so. But we'll get that drilled up and we'll pick it up in a second. And then paint exposed metal to prevent. Upper control arm out, and side by side, upper control arm versus the lower control arm. Oh, lighting looks bad right there. Look at that. Much more sturdy, beefier. The bushings are going to be better range of movement. Alrighty, the uppers on both sides are removed. We are now going to remove the lower control arms, 21 millimeter. There's this little seat that it needs to sit on. Make sure the spring seats all the way in. That's why I have it out. And we can't get that to droop enough to fit this spring in there. So we have spring coil compressors.
Be careful when you're using these, because when you start smashing the spring down, the thing is under tension and it's ready to kill you at any moment. So be careful if you use a spring compressor, but that's what we're going to use to get this in. It's still compressed. It is in there, properly seated. There's the edge of the spring, the boot. And we are actually going to put the control arms in first before we let the tension off the spring. Otherwise, that spring is just going to drop the entire axle. So in here, we have the recommended lengths from Metalcloak, 2.5 to 3.5 inch lift. We're going to make sure our caster angle is going to stay about 5 degrees, 5.5 degrees. We'll do that through alignment, but these are the measurements for the control arms, and you're going to measure from the center of the eyelet to the center of the eyelet to get these measurements. So let's go measure these out and get them put in. It's going to be center of the eyelet to the center of the eyelet, and we're going to set it at 18 3/4. And we're just going to make sure both the upper control arms are the same. So center to when you're installing these, we got the upper control arm back here. You just want to get these snug. You don't want them tight, because when it's up here, the rubber is resting. And if you tighten it out right now, when you set it down, it's actually going to put tension on that rubber in its resting position. So you just want it snug now, get the Jeep down on the ground, and then torque everything down. The rears are the short ones. The fronts are the longer ones. We are going to do 23 1/16, center of the hole to center of the hole. And so there we go at 23 1/16. Arms, the adjustable nut towards the rear, and the bend is going to go from here, and then it's going to bend outboard. That way it can clear wheels and tires. So we're going to thread it in on that side there, and then we're going to come back and we're going to thread it in on this side right here. If we that guy there, and I got to get an extra hand here because we got to swing this out a little bit to line up. Rough for these brackets, but they are passenger driver side specific. This is how that bracket's going to sit. So there are 2 holes, at least in the Rubicon edition, that line up right there. This is the outboard mounting bracket for the shock. There's a hole that matches on the side, 2 on the bottom, and it comes out. So pretty much line up all the holes here, and we got all the hardware to put it together. To put this bracket in, this hole is too small to fit the bolt that comes with the kit, and it does say to open it up a little bit, so we are using a stepper bit. We're gonna slowly pull the wheel to turn, and then that'll get us in there with the drill to do the stepper. As we were putting it in, the driver's side went just fine. Passenger side, as we were putting this in, there's 2 holes. The passenger side has no hole on the front one, whereas the driver's side did. So we just gotta mark this, punch it, and drill it. Shock in. Right now it's just sitting in there. At the top there's 2 sets of bushings. So take the top set of bushings off, which is there. You're gonna put that on top, put that little hat on top, a little washer on top, and then the nut will screw on top of that in there. 19mm bolt, 20 foot-pounds is what you're going to tighten it down to. We were able to get the passenger side on without the spring compressor. We were able just to lower it enough and just push the spring up in there. The limiting factor is your axle will start binding up on this, so you can only go down, or sorry, your drive shaft will start binding up on that cross member, so you can only go down so far, but you should be able to pull it down enough to get that in there. We will get our spacers put in, because you can put the pucks in between the gaps. You can see the boot on this drive shaft is pushing against the exhaust, so we will be installing an exhaust spacer here to give us a little bit more clearance over there. Just a friendly word of advice: when you hook up this end and not this end of the lower control arm, this is a pendulum. Do not stand underneath this and let it go. Ask me how I know, okay? So don't stand under the control arms and just let them go. The shock on the passenger side, there's a lot of plastic that kind of hangs down. It's really tight. We just took a little Dremel and we cut it out a little bit more so we can actually get the rubber grommets and stuff in there. This is just plastic, if you can see there. There's nothing really behind it, so we just trimmed that up a little bit so we can reach the top. Again, this is on the passenger side. Just to see the Rocksport shock versus the factory one. That's quite a bit more shock there. Yeah, he's over there breaking his own toolbox. I'm on this side of the Jeep, and he's over there blaming me. Alrighty, so we need to do the bump stop spacers. This is going to be unique to each individual design, depending on if you have aftermarket fenders, stock fenders, everything like that. I'm going to start with 2. We're going to cut our fenders here eventually to accommodate clearance, but after you get the spring in there, you can actually just take these pucks and stack them in, and then just put the washer on top, and then feed the nut through. Metalcloak says stack them, and then Metalcloak says stack them first and put them inside the spring, and then put the spring on. But as you can see right there, I just put it straight through. Just nut on the bottom right inside here, and you can thread it up, tighten it down.